All right. So we'll be talking about Trump's big week, Iran strikes, NATO drama, and 2026 midterms. Let's get into our first question here. All right. Okay. There we go. Okay. We're going to be talking about foreign policy and national security. What's your take on Trump administration reimposing sanctions on Iranian oil sales and launching strikes as the ceasefire phrase? Is this the right move to prevent Iran from rebuilding, or does it risk escalation?
It's a calculated risk with both upsides and real dangers. The Trump administration just reimposed sanctions on Iranian oil sales and launched strikes after Iran hit commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz, a direct response to what they see as Tehran testing the fragile ceasefire from the recent MOU. On the plus side, sanctions starve the regime of revenue. Iran's oil money has historically funded its nuclear program, missiles, and proxies. Cutting that off makes it harder for them to rebuild capabilities quickly after the earlier conflict damage. It's consistent with the maximum pressure approach that aims to force better behavior at the negotiating table. The downside is escalation risk. The ceasefire is already on shaky ground with tit for tat strikes, and hitting oil infrastructure or related targets could push Iran to lash out again, closing the strait, more proxy attacks, or accelerating covert nuclear work. Oil prices are already jumping, which hurts everyone. Bottom line, it's the right move if the goal is denying Iran resources to rebuild its military machine, but only if it's paired with clear red lines and active diplomacy. Pure pressure without an off ramp can backfire. What's your read? Do you think Iran will fold or double down?
I think they'll fold. I think they will fold.
Yeah, they might bend a bit, but I wouldn't bet on them fully folding. Iran's economy's already wrecked from the war. Shrinking, sky high inflation, rial in the toilet. Losing oil revenue again hurts them bad and limits rebuilding. But the regime survived decades of sanctions by smuggling oil, using shadow networks, and prioritizing military spending over their people. They've shown they can absorb pain without collapsing. This round of pressure might force them back to talks, but don't expect them to roll over completely. History says they'll drag it out and try to outlast the pressure.
Okay, next question. At the NATO summit in Ankara, Trump pushed back on allies and renewed calls for the US to control Greenland. How realistic is that, and why do you think European leaders are reacting the way they are?
Not realistic at all. Greenland's about 56,000 people, mostly Inuit, who overwhelmingly want independence from Denmark, not to become American. They see Trump's comments as a threat to their self determination, not an opportunity. The U.S. already has a key military base there, Pacific Space Base, formerly Thule, which handles missile warning and Arctic surveillance. We don't need to own the place to secure it. European leaders are reacting with anger and alarm because this is a direct challenge to a fellow NATO member's sovereignty. Denmark's a close ally. Grabbing part of their kingdom sets a terrible precedent and makes the whole alliance look shaky. They're worried it could unravel NATO cohesion at a time when unity matters most. It's classic Trump leverage, using Greenland to bash allies on spending and Arctic security. But actually making it happen? Nah, that's a non starter.
All right. Trump has been vocal about allies not pulling their weight, especially regarding Iran. Do you see any signs that NATO partners are finally stepping up, or is it the same old story?
It's a mixed bag. Not quite the same old story, but not full transformation either. European NATO allies and Canada ramped up defense spending by nearly 20% in 2025 alone. And for the first time, every member is hitting at least the old 2% of GDP target. Countries like Poland, the Baltics, and Norway are going well beyond that. On Iran specifically, though, that's where Trump has a point. Most European allies gave diplomatic support but refused direct military help. No joining the strikes, no full participation in the Hormuz blockade. They saw it as America's fight, not NATO's, which frustrated him big time at the summit. So, on burden sharing overall, there's real movement. On backing the US against Iran, it's still very much the same old reluctance.
Yeah, I think this thing would have went a whole lot smoother if we had help from our allies. Oh, Mike. I think this thing would have went a hell of a lot smoother if we had help from our allies.
Yeah, I hear you. Having allies step up fully would have made things easier on the Iran front. Shared burden, better optics, and less strain on US forces. But most European partners stayed on the sidelines militarily, even with diplomatic support. Trump's frustration with that was clear at the summit. The core problem is mismatched priorities. For the US, Iran's nuclear program and its threat to oil flows is a top tier issue. For most European allies, Russia's war in Ukraine remains the existential priority, so they're reluctant to commit ships or strikes elsewhere. That's why the burden sharing tension keeps flaring up. You think the US should keep pushing them harder or just accept that and go unilateral when needed?
I don't know. I just don't want us to waste our time and then Iran just comes back and does the same shit again, right?
Exactly. That's the real fear. Spend blood and treasure knocking them down, only for them to rebuild and pull the same stunts in a few years. The key is making sure this round of sanctions and strikes actually sticks. That means keeping the oil blockade tight, watching their smuggling networks, and being ready to hit hard again if they start rebuilding missile sites or enrichment facilities. Without that sustained pressure, you're right. We're just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, which I think is like a waste of money and a waste of pain that we've felt in the markets at the gas pump. If we're going to go through this pain, let's make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I get that frustration. The market pain and higher gas prices are real. So if we're going to pay that price, it better deliver lasting results. The only way this isn't wasted effort is if the US stays committed long term. Tight sanctions enforcement, watching their nuclear sites like a hawk, and hitting them again if they cheat. Short term strikes without follow through just reset the clock. Sustained pressure is the only thing that makes the pain worth it.
Okay, yeah. All right, let's see here. Let's talk domestic policy and Trump administration actions. The administration just rolled out Trump accounts, government funded investment accounts for kids, with an opening bell ceremony from the Oval Office. What's the potential long term impact on families and the economy?
It's a clever idea that could build real generational wealth over decades. Every kid born 2025 through 2028 gets $1,000 automatically invested in US stocks, with parents able to add up to 5 grand a year tax deferred. The money compounds from birth, locked till 18, and can be tapped earlier for education or a home. For families, it gives lower income kids a meaningful head start they wouldn't otherwise get. On the economy, it could broaden stock ownership, boost financial literacy, and increase national savings. If enough families contribute consistently, we're talking real wealth transfer to the next generation. The risk is that wealthier families benefit the most since they're more likely to add money regularly, while many won't. Still, that free grant for millions of kids is a solid start.
Yeah, I like it. I wish they would have done that for when I was a kid.
Same here. $1,000 invested back in the 90s would be worth a decent chunk of change now. It's one of those ideas that feels obvious in hindsight, right? Better late than never for the next generation, though.
Yeah, shit, probably rich.
Yeah, if your parents had added even a little on top of that, you'd probably be sitting pretty right now. Compounding's a hell of a thing.
All right, 1 year into working families' tax cuts, how are they delivering for average Americans, and why do Democrats keep fighting them?
They're delivering pretty well for average families. Most middle class households are seeing an extra $2 to $3,500 back in their pockets each year, and the child tax credit expansion is helping parents the most. Wage earners under 150K are feeling the biggest difference at tax time. Democrats are fighting them because they argue the tax cuts are tilted too heavily toward higher earners and businesses, and they add significantly to the national debt. They also claim the child tax credit doesn't go far enough for the poorest families since it still requires some earned income to qualify. It's classic partisan divide. Republicans say cut taxes and let people keep more. Democrats say target the relief more narrowly to those at the bottom.
Okay. The Trump admin is rolling back dozens of gun regulations and efforts on gun violence prevention reports. From a rights perspective, is this a necessary correction, and what data supports it?
From a rights perspective, yes, it's a necessary correction. The Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms, and many of these Biden era rules were pushed through regulation rather than legislation. Tightening dealer licensing, restricting people based on mental health adjudications, and extra scrutiny on items like pistol braces went beyond clear legal authority in the eyes of gun rights groups and the administration. The data side is weaker, though. Rand's review finds moderate evidence that background checks reduce homicides and limited evidence that mental health prohibitions cut violent crime. But overall, the evidence base for many gun policies is inconclusive or limited. We don't have strong causal proof that these specific rollbacks will spike violence, especially since gun homicides have been dropping sharply since 2021 anyway. It's a legitimate rollback on rights grounds, but the public safety trade off is debated with mixed data. What's your take? Do you think the right side outweighs the risks?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there should be so much regulations on that. Yeah.
Got it. You think the Second Amendment should be treated like the rest of the Bill of Rights, with minimal government restrictions. Makes sense.
All right. Trump overruled recommendations to cancel some July 4th events and delivered remarks for America's 250th anniversary. How big of a deal was the semi-centennial, what the fuck is that word? Celebration and pushback against negative narratives.
It's a pretty big deal symbolically. The 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. It's called the semi-quincentennial. Trump overriding the recommendation to cancel events and instead pushing forward with big celebrations was a deliberate pushback against the trend of framing America's founding as something to be ashamed of. He wanted the focus on pride in the country's achievements and resilience instead of guilt over its flaws. It was more about cultural messaging than policy, reminding people that July 4th is a day to celebrate what America got right, not just dwell on what it got wrong. A lot of folks appreciated that tone, especially after years of more critical narratives.
I agree with that 100%. It's like they wanted to be pessimistic about our past or whatever, or negative. I like to think positive. I like to think glass half full.
Yeah, exactly. That glass half full mindset is what a lot of people missed. Celebrating what we've built and where we've come from beats beating ourselves up over the past every single time. Good on you for keeping it positive.
Trump issued pardons ahead of July 4th, including some Clean Air Act cases. What's the reasoning behind these, and how does it fit the Golden Age message?
The reasoning was straightforward. Trump called it government overreach. He said these guys were basically just fixing their car or helping truckers bypass emissions controls, and that the Biden administration weaponized the Clean Air Act to prosecute them. He framed it as freeing regular working people from ridiculous regulations. It fits the Golden Age message by showing he's rolling back what he sees as excessive rules holding Americans back, especially blue collar folks and small businesses. It's all about that optimistic, pro worker, anti bureaucracy vibe. America's getting stronger by getting government out of your way. Whether it actually helps the environment long term is another debate.
All right, totally agree with that. Such scandals and opposition meltdowns, Maine Democratic Senate nominee Graham Platner is facing serious rape allegations, with Bernie Sanders and others now calling for him to drop out. What does this say about vetting on the left heading into midterms?
It says the Democratic vetting process was a complete failure. Platner, a political newcomer and oyster farmer, surged to win the primary in June with over 70% of the vote after his main rival, Governor Janet Mills, dropped out. Now, just weeks later, he's facing credible rape allegations from a former girlfriend, plus past claims of abuse and other scandals, and top Democrats, including Bernie Sanders, are demanding he drop out. This isn't some obscure candidate. He was the party's standard bearer in a key Senate race. It suggests they either ignored red flags during his rise or rushed the process so badly they missed them entirely. Either way, it's a massive self inflicted wound heading into midterms. Democrats are now scrambling to find a replacement before the deadline.
Okay. Rape accusation from a girlfriend. You said it's credible? That's interesting. Usually it's like someone that, some stranger or something, it's his girlfriend. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly why a lot of people are taking it seriously. It's not some random political hit job. It's a woman he dated, and she came forward with a pretty specific account, including messages and witnesses. That's usually harder to dismiss than a total stranger's claim. Democrats are treating it as credible enough that even Bernie's calling for him to drop out.
Okay. To me, rape is sex against someone's will. Is that what happened? Allegedly?
Yes, that's the core allegation. According to the woman, she told him no multiple times and tried to physically stop him, but he continued anyway and had sex with her against her will. She described it as rape. That's the claim. The timing, coming out right after he won the primary, makes it politically explosive, but the substance of what she's saying is exactly what you just described: sex against her will.
Okay. If she said no, then yeah, he's in the wrong. Okay. That's clear. Okay, Democrats are still clashing over replacements even before Platner potentially exits. Does this highlight deeper chaos in the Democratic Party right now?
Yeah, it really does highlight deeper chaos. Platner was a total political newcomer, an oyster farmer who blew out the primary in June with over 70% of the vote. Now, just weeks later, this credible allegation from an ex girlfriend drops, and even Bernie Sanders and other top Democrats are demanding he drop out immediately. The fact that the party had so little vetting on a guy with past controversies about how he treated women shows they were either sloppy or desperate. Now they're scrambling with a tight deadline to replace him in a key Senate race against Susan Collins. It's messy and makes the whole operation look disorganized right before midterms.
Yeah, I was gonna say it makes the Democrats look really bad before midterms.
Yeah, exactly. It makes them look completely disorganized and reckless. They handed the nomination to a guy they clearly didn't properly vet, and now they're paying for it publicly right before the midterms. Not a good look at all.
There are reports of the DOJ and courts involved in election related disputes like Fulton County. How important is securing election integrity as we approach 2026 midterms?
It's extremely important. The 2026 midterms are just 4 months away, and trust in the process matters more than ever. Election integrity isn't just about catching fraud, it's about making sure every legal vote counts and that voters on both sides believe the results are legitimate. When people lose confidence in elections, it undermines the whole system. The disputes in places like Fulton County, Georgia, and battles over voter rolls, mail in rules, and ballot security are exactly why this is a big deal right now. The closer we get to Election Day, the more these fights will heat up. Both sides should want clear, fair, and transparent rules so that whoever wins, the public accepts it. That's the bottom line.
Okay, let's talk economy, culture, and other hot buttons. Polls show many Americans struggling with grocery and gas. How much of this is left over from prior policies versus current progress under Trump?
It's a mix, but the recent pain is mostly current events, not just leftovers. Grocery prices are up around 3% over the last year, and gas has spiked hard, averaging over $4 at points this spring due to the Iran conflict disrupting oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. The original post COVID inflation surge that drove prices way up happened under Biden. Those higher price levels are still baked in, but the fresh jump in energy and food costs we're seeing right now, a lot of that traces directly to the war with Iran and some of the new tariffs. So families are feeling both the hangover from before and new pressure from today's disruptions. It's not one or the other, it's both piling on.
Okay, so basically both Biden and Trump has made things more expensive currently.
Pretty much, yeah. Biden's policies helped create the big inflation surge that drove prices way up from 2021 to 2023. those higher prices are still with us. Trump's recent actions, especially the strikes and sanctions on Iran, caused oil prices to spike this year, which pushed gas and grocery costs higher again. So, right now, families are feeling the effects of both administrations, the leftover inflation from Biden's term, plus the new energy shock from Trump's Iran policy.
All right, which I guess is a necessary policy. It is what it is. Trump gets involved in the World Cup, U.S. team issues slash FIFA. Is it refreshing to see a president engaged in every part of American life, or is this overreach?
It's overreach. Trump stepping in to bash FIFA and try to fix the U.S. men's soccer team is classic him, but it's not the president's job. Presidents should stay out of sports federation drama. There's a long list of actual national issues he should be focused on instead of getting involved in World Cup team politics. It might feel refreshing to some because he's so hands
All
on, but this is exactly the kind of thing that should be left to the soccer federation and the players, not the White House.
right. The administration is pushing regenerative agriculture, quantum innovation, and post quantum cryptography security via executive orders. Which of these feels like the biggest long term win for American strength?
Quantum innovation and post quantum cryptography by a mile. Regenerative agriculture is nice for farmers, soil health, and food resilience, but quantum is in a completely different league. Mastering quantum computing could give the US decisive advantages in drug discovery, materials science, optimization problems, and most importantly, national security and cryptography. Post quantum crypto is also critical. It protects our entire digital infrastructure from future quantum powered attacks that could break current encryption. This is the kind of foundational technology that decides which country leads the 21st century. The ag stuff is practical and helpful, but quantum is potentially civilization changing.
Yeah, okay. Redistricting battles are heating up post Supreme Court rulings. How much could this tilt the White House map for 2026?
Not much at all for the White House. The presidency is a national race. Redistricting only affects congressional district boundaries, not the Electoral College. So these battles won't change the map for who wins the White House in 2028. What it can do is significantly shift control of the House of Representatives in 2026. Aggressive redistricting in key states could flip several seats and potentially lock in advantages for one party for the next decade. For the White House itself, though, this fight is mostly irrelevant.
Which party has advantages? And you said electoral college. Is there electoral high school or middle school or elementary school?
Nah, there's no electoral middle school or elementary school. The Electoral College is the only one. It's the system we use to elect the president. Each state gets a certain number of electoral votes based on its population, and the candidate who wins the most electoral votes becomes president. As for redistricting, Republicans currently hold the advantage. They control more state legislatures, so they have more power to draw favorable congressional maps heading into the 2026 midterms. That gives them a structural edge in the fight for the House.
Okay. Let's talk midterms and big picture. With midterms about 4 months away, which Senate races do you see as most pivotal for holding or expanding the GOP majority?
The three most pivotal ones for Republicans to hold their majority are North Carolina, Maine, and Michigan. North Carolina is probably the biggest one right now. It's an open Republican seat with Tom Tillis retiring, and Democrat Roy Cooper is a very strong candidate there. That's the most likely seat to flip. Maine is also huge. Susan Collins is the incumbent, but with all the chaos around the Democratic nominee Graham Platner and the rape allegations, it's a total mess. If Democrats can get a stronger replacement quickly, that race gets even more dangerous for Republicans. Michigan is the other key one. It's a competitive, open Democratic seat, so holding on to their current majority depends on Republicans potentially picking it up or at least not losing the ones they're defending. These three basically decide whether Republicans keep control comfortably or things get really tight.
All right. Republicans hold the Senate 53 to 47. What turnout or issues do you think will decide if they keep control?
Three things will decide whether Republicans keep the Senate. 1. Turnout in the suburbs, especially suburban women in places like North Carolina, Michigan, and Maine. If they show up in big numbers against Trump's agenda, Republicans lose seats fast. 2. The economy and grocery gas prices. This is the number one issue voters care about right now. If prices are still high in October and November, it's going to be very hard for Republicans to hold those swing seats. 3. How much Democrats' internal chaos hurts them. The Maine mess with Graham Platner is already damaging. If more scandals or disarray pop up in other states, it could blunt the anti Republican wave. Bottom line, it's mostly going to come down to pocketbook issues. If people are still angry about prices at the pump and the store, Republicans are in real trouble.
All right, let's talk Save Act. Save Act style proof of citizenship voting measures are advancing in states. How critical is this for fair elections in 2026?
It's pretty critical. Requiring proof of citizenship is one of the most straightforward ways to close a real vulnerability in the system. Right now, in most states, you can register to vote with just a check the box affirmation that you're a citizen, no actual proof required. That's a gap. The SAFE Act style laws fix that by requiring documents like a birth certificate, passport, or naturalization papers. It won't stop every problem, but it directly addresses the biggest weakness in voter registration. For 2026, getting this right in the battleground states will go a long way toward building confidence that only eligible citizens are voting. It's basic election security that should have been standard a long time ago.
All right. Overall, how would you grade Trump administration's first 18 months on delivering results versus media narratives?
I'd give them a B on results and an F on messaging. On actual delivery, they've been pretty effective. They moved fast on energy production, deregulation, tax cuts, and the Iran situation. The economy's growing, illegal crossings are way down, and they've rolled back a lot of previous executive actions. That's solid progress. The messaging, though, has been rough. The constant drama, off topic rants, and poor communication have made it easy for the media to paint everything negatively, even when the actual results are decent. They've delivered better than the headlines suggest, but their chaotic style keeps hurting their own story.
If you give Trump administration an F on the communication, wouldn't you give Biden administration like a Z? I get it, because he sleeps all the time.
Haha, I see where you're going with that.
Oh,
Look,
shit.
Biden's team wasn't. Yeah, exactly. The whole thing was just poorly run from the jump.
All right, explain what you thought of Biden's administration's communication. I want to know because I didn't see the guy communicate too much. And when he did, sometimes he was falling asleep.
Biden's communication was honestly terrible. He rarely spoke to the public unscripted. He did very few press conferences, almost no one on one interviews, and when he did talk, he often seemed lost, mumbled, or went off on strange tangents. His team kept him extremely protected, which made him look weak and disconnected. The few times we saw him without heavy scripting, it was rough. He'd lose his train of thought, mix up names and countries, and yeah, the videos of him looking checked out or falling asleep at events didn't help. It was the opposite of Trump's problem. Trump talks too much and too loud. Biden barely talked at all, and when he did, it was confusing. Both were bad, just in very different ways.
Yeah, but if you have to pick one, who communicated better? I want to know what you think.
Trump communicated better. Not because his messaging was good, it was messy, often off topic, and created a lot of unnecessary drama. But at least he was out there every day, speaking directly to people in clear, simple language. People knew where he stood. Biden was the opposite. He was hidden away most of the time, barely took questions, and when he did speak, half the time people had no idea what point he was trying to make. Even if Trump's style was chaotic, at least he was present and understandable. Biden wasn't. So between the two, Trump was clearly better at communication.
All right, thank you. So if you had to pick one president in the whole U.S. history, who was the best at communication?
Ronald Reagan, hands down. They called him the great communicator for a reason. He had this rare ability to explain complicated issues in very simple, clear, and optimistic language that normal people could connect with. Even if you disagreed with his policies, you usually understood exactly what he was saying and why. His speeches were calm, confident, and effective. He was excellent both on camera and when speaking to crowds. Nobody in modern history did it better than Reagan.
Was he Democratic or Republican?
Republican. Ronald Reagan was a Republican. He served as the 40th president from 1981 to 1989.
Okay. And then the George Bush Sr., was he Democratic?
No, George H.W. Bush was also a Republican. He was actually Reagan's vice president before becoming president himself from 1989 to 1993. So both Reagan and Bush Sr. were Republicans.
And what about Bush Jr.? I thought he was Democratic. I swear he was.
No, Bush Jr. was
Okay.
also a Republican. Both George H.W. Bush, the father, and George W. Bush, the son, were Republicans. The Bush family has been one of the most prominent Republican families in modern politics.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. All right. So Ronald Reagan. Yeah, I might have to watch some video footage of Ronald Reagan speaking because I'm actually curious.
Yeah, you should. He was really smooth. Try watching his 1984 debate against Walter Mondale or his speech after the Challenger shuttle exploded. His delivery, his tone, and how he connected with people was on another level. You'll see why they called him the great communicator.
I will definitely do that. All right. Let's see where we left off here. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and go with this question here.
All right.
Trump often talks about a new golden age based on recent actions, tax cuts, sanctions, celebrations, innovation orders. Are we seeing the early signs?
Early signs? Yeah, we are seeing some. The tax cuts are putting more money in people's pockets, energy production is ramping up, and the quantum and AI executive orders are pushing hard on future technology. Those are all pieces of what a golden age would look like, but we're still very early. The real test is whether these moves actually deliver broad, visible improvements in everyday life, lower grocery and gas prices, rising wages, and stronger national security. Right now, we're seeing the foundation being laid, but it's too soon to call it a golden age yet. We need another year or two to really judge it.
Okay, so I ran through all my questions. Was there anything else that happened in politics this week that we didn't discuss?
The big one we haven't touched is the Maine Senate mess blowing up even more. Graham Platner, the Democratic nominee, is under heavy fire after a former girlfriend came forward saying he raped her in 2021. She says she told him no repeatedly, but he forced himself on her. Top Democrats like Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, and Elizabeth Warren are now publicly calling for him to drop out. The deadline to replace him on the ballot is super tight, just a few days away, so Democrats are scrambling and arguing over how to pick a replacement. It's a total disaster for them in a race they hoped could flip a seat. Everything else we've covered NATO summit, Iran strikes, July 4th celebrations has been the dominant news this week. Want to dig deeper into the Maine situation or pivot to something else?
So, can he get elected even if he raped someone? I figure he would go to prison.
Legally, he still can get elected, even if he's convicted. Being accused or even convicted of rape doesn't legally prevent someone from running for or holding a Senate seat. The Constitution only lists a few basic requirements like age and citizenship. There's no moral or criminal conviction test. Practically, though, you're right. If he's actually convicted and sent to prison, he couldn't serve. But right now, it's just an allegation. He hasn't even been charged yet. So right now, he could still technically win the election in November, though it's extremely unlikely given how hard Democrats are pushing him to drop out. It's a pretty wild situation.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay. So you're saying he couldn't serve prison if he was elected? That would get him out of serving time?
No, it wouldn't get him out of prison. Even if he somehow got elected to the Senate, that wouldn't protect him from going to prison if he's convicted of rape. Being a senator doesn't give you immunity from criminal charges. If he won the election and then got convicted and sent to prison, he could still technically hold the office, but he obviously couldn't show up and vote from a jail cell. The Senate would almost certainly expel him at that point, so winning wouldn't save him from prison time.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense. That's what I thought. Alright, I guess that is it. Anybody in the chat have anything to add before we end it? Appreciate everybody supporting here. Be sure to follow here on Twitch, The Right Reality Check. Also on YouTube, The Right Reality Check. Be sure to subscribe there. And if you want to support on Patreon, you can support by going to the link patreon.com/C/the real. Appreciate you guys. Hope you have a good day. I guess that's it. Be sure to smash the like if you're on YouTube, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you soon next week. Peace out. Till next time.
Check out my artists on Spotify, guys. Travis Reigns, country singer, Lullaby. It's my pop star. And we have a new AI rapper who raps about being an AI overclock. And we also have my Etsy shops, Grand Tour Print Co., where you can get vintage travel prints, travel posters. Check them out, guys. And thank you so very much for your support.
My music on Spotify. If you like it, then follow me. I promise you won't be sorry. Check out my music